Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into this brand new edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. I'm your host, Andy Herman. Want to kick things off today by just saying thank you. I didn't know what to expect. I've now done about 81 episodes of these, and coming into this, I figured I'd do 10 minutes a day. I figured that based on the internet being the internet, and people who comment being people who comment, that maybe the comments wouldn't be so kind, and maybe there would be more dislikes than likes, and just never really know what to expect when you kind of venture into something new. The fact that you guys have already put me over 1,500 followers on YouTube, the fact that you guys have liked almost not almost every single episode in ridiculous fashion, all those sort of things. I just want to sincerely thank you for taking the time to listen in every day, to subscribe, to tell people about the podcast, to reach out to me on Twitter, to let me know you appreciate the content. All that stuff hasn't gone unnoticed. And as I've mentioned before, I do this for fun. This is definitely something that's grown exponentially over the course of the last handful of years for me, but it's something that I love doing, and I love talking to you guys about the Packers. I love talking Packers, and anytime I get a platform to do so, I don't take it for granted. I take it very seriously, and I try to give you guys something different and new every day. But again, just the feedback I've received has been amazing, so wanted to take just a couple minutes to thank you guys all for doing that, and it hasn't gone unnoticed, and I appreciate it greatly. Enough of that crap. Let's talk about some Green Bay Packers. Going to be going over my grades today. Don't really have any other topics that I want to get to, but the offensive grades this week were really, almost universally fantastic. They kicked off this game, and the offensive line just came out kicking ass. If you go back and watch the first probably about quarter of this game, Rodgers was good, the receivers were good, but this was just the offensive line just absolutely dominating in pass protection, dominated in the running game. It was so fun to watch, and you definitely noticed a little bit of a decline once Corey Linsley went out. Elton Jenkins has to switch to center, John Runyon goes in, then a little bit later in the game, Lucas Patrick goes down, Rick Wagner has to come in, and you could just kind of see it, getting a little bit worse kind of as the game went along. But when they opened up this game, the offensive line just stood out. Honestly, it was some of the most impressive offensive line play that I've graded in the last 4 years as I've been doing this. And kudos to that starting front line, Bakhtiari and Lucas Patrick and Elton Jenkins, Corey Linsley, and then Billy Turner. I just thought they did fantastic work to really open up the game and really kind of, take the game by the neck and really punish the Bears and never really give them an opportunity to get going defensively to start the game off. So I thought that was worth noting just because it was so obvious just how dominant they were to begin the game. Let me go over my 3 top graded players. Number 1, kind of per usual, is Aaron Rodgers, and you just kind of go back and look at this game. Couple, reads where he read left and there was a player open right. Davante Adams had one where he had his kind of classic slot fade, actually to the left-hand side. He threw to EQ deep on the right-hand side, and, just EQ wasn't open. One kind of poor decision where, MVS, I think it was MVS and Alan Lazard kind of both ran vertical routes, and he just kind of threw it up. And it just fell harmlessly incomplete, but it was kind of an odd ball from Rodgers. My guess is, maybe there was some error from the receivers there too, but he just kind of put it in a spot where honestly the best place to get it was a Chicago Bear. Also, the big egregious play from Rodgers, I know it's going to sound like I'm grading in the negative here, but I'll get to my point in a second. The big negative play for Rodgers was Davante Adams just ran this gorgeous, double move down the center of the field, basically the same play that he threw to Tanyan later. And Davante was gorgeous on the play. It was one of those classic Jordy Nelson double moves, deep post, deep center of the field, and it's wide open. It's going to be a touchdown. And for some reason, Rodgers just kind of got caught mid-step. He mentioned on the Pat McAfee show that he thought Khalil Mack was coming. You look at it. I actually thought Tanyan did a really great job blocking up Khalil Mack and giving him enough time to really plant and throw that thing deep. As he mentioned, it came up about 8 yards short on the play, and you just don't see that from Rodgers. He mentioned later that he doesn't miss that throw twice, and he didn't. He hit Tanyan on it later. In fact, with much more pressure in his face on the second throw than what was on the first throw. So he kind of made up for it. But outside of those couple plays, there's like 3, maybe 4 plays the entire game where there was almost any mistake from Rodgers. It was just such a clean and crisp game. He got the ball out of his hands, like he mentioned in his press conference. He had a great pocket all day to throw into. Never really got hit all that often, and you could just see that he was confident, keeping his eyes downfield. Scrambled for a first down when he needed to. Hit Robert Tonyan down the field. Really the drop ball by Davante Adams later in the game was a perfectly thrown ball deep as well. So just another really great performance with, like I said, a couple throws back, but from first quarter to fourth quarter, just a very, very strong performance again from Aaron Rodgers. Number 2 on my list, David Bakhtiari. And again, David Bakhtiari is going to be somebody that consistently shows up on this list just because of how dominant he is. But we've had times before where people get a ton of credit and the grades just don't match up to it. Or, people are incredibly excited about a player and they're actually graded in the negative or things like that. We've seen Pro Bowl players who aren't really all that good. We've seen All-Pro players who get the publicity and the accolades, but the play doesn't always quite live up to expectations, and that's just never the case with David Bakhtiari. In fact, I think you can make a strong argument that he's playing the best football of his career right now. I know he just signed the big contract. He could maybe take it a little easier if he wanted to. He's got that major deal, but that is not David Bakhtiari. I think he's run blocking as well as he has in his entire career. And then you go back to last year, first, 10 games of the season, really struggled with the bull rush. And that's always been kind of an Achilles heel. And if you remember, Bakhtiari was a little bit banged up and you could tell his ability to anchor at the beginning of last year just wasn't the same, but really struggled with the bull rush. And kind of one of those situations and scenarios where everyone was talking about how great Bakhtiari was. And he was still really good. Don't get me wrong. Still really, really good, but not quite up to his normal level because he just couldn't anchor as well. And a lot of those bull rushes, represented pressure on Aaron Rodgers, or resulted in pressure on Rodgers, I should say. It is not the case this year. He has the full ability to anchor. I've never seen anyone just be able to kind of squat in his stance, almost bend in, almost like a C shape, and just not give up ground. And once he anchors and gets his hands on the opposing defensive lineman or edge rusher, it's just done. He doesn't give up any traction after it. And it's interesting. You'll see him on so many plays. You'll see him give up like 2 or 3 yards, and he's kind of like getting a little bit, the defender's kind of getting a little bit close to Rodgers, and then it's like he just becomes this like brick wall, and then the play's over for Bakhtiari and who's ever going against him. It's like he's cement, and he's just getting the defender stuck in mud at that point, and it's a clinic to watch at this point to what he does on a game by game basis. And again, for all those players who sometimes get accolades and don't really live up to it on tape, David Bakhtiari is not one of those players and deserves a ton of credit for what he does game in and game out. Davante Adams was number 3 on my list, and kind of a similar situation to Rodgers. Had a couple, inexplicable plays. Had the drop on the free play, which was like 15 yards downfield. Just kind of turned his head too quick and dropped it, and then had the drop later in the game on a play. It was a tough contested catch, but I'm sure one that Davante Adams would like to tell you that that he should have come down with. That just would have been kind of bonus points towards the end of the game. But outside of that, again, the route running from Davante, he had a couple plays where he put defenders on their asses based on how he ran his route. Just, I think it was Jalen Johnson in one occasion, just covering him in the slot and just, part of it I think may have been the field conditions, but he got Jalen Johnson just all mixed up. He slipped on the field, and then, that was the slot fade that I was talking about, that Rodgers just wasn't looking his way on that particular play. He was looking at EQ, threw incomplete to EQ. But just the route running, again, was fantastic. The play in the end zone to go up and high point the football, just another really impressive performance. I know it was only 6 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown with a couple drops mixed in there. And maybe you wouldn't think that that's normally going to be a top 3 grade, but you go back and you watch his game throughout. He was getting open once again consistently, had some big catches at big times, and just really liked this game again from Davante Adams. I'll go over my bottom 3 in just a second, but I wanted to shout out a couple other people who had some really high scores in this game. They just, other players graded higher. Aaron Jones, Alan Lazard, Robert Tonyan, and Elton Jenkins, all plus 0.75 or better grades in this game. And Corey Linsley in limited time was just a hair below that as well. In fact, there were hardly any negative grades. There was a time where, it looked like it was going to be maybe no negative grades in this game. There were 3 players that just kind of barely snuck under that Mendoza line, if you will. Jay Sternberger was my lowest graded player. He's just a really bad blocker at this point in his career. Came up with a couple okay blocks later in the game, but he's not even getting in the way in blocks at times, and his technique is way off. And frankly, he's just not doing enough as a receiving tight end to really make up for his deficiencies as a blocker. And I think, honestly, this is one of the more disappointing seasons for anyone that's specifically on the offensive side of the ball. Almost everyone else on offense is performing up to or kind of beyond expectations. I think a lot of people, myself included, had high hopes for Jay Sternberger. That has not come to fruition yet. I thought Matt LaFleur's done a really nice job trying to get him in space more and just kind of use his speed and run after the catch ability and try to put him in positions to be successful. But at some time, you can't hide his deficiency as a blocker. And like I said, he's just not really making up for it with his, with any sort of playmaking ability. So need a little bit more from Jay Sternberger. This was another poor graded game, almost basically entirely based on his run blocking and pass protecting in this game. Billy Turner ended up with a very slight negative in this game. Really liked this game overall from Billy Turner, especially when he was matched up so much with Khalil Mack at right tackle. Interestingly, he had a plus 0.55 grade through about the first half of this game, and then in the second half just kind of fell off a little bit. The move to guard, I think, just threw him off maybe a little bit. Didn't seem quite as comfortable there. Hadn't played there since last year. So overall, what he did against Khalil Mack, I thought was a really impressive performance. It didn't grade the greatest, but again, this was a winning game overall for Billy Turner. And then Darius Shepard, although he played only 2 plays, had one slightly negative graded play, so he ended up as my third lowest graded player at negative 0.1. This was just a really strong game from the offense. You just didn't have very many negatives in this game. So, great game by the offense. I thought they dictated the pace early and often. You could tell there was a little bit of a dip when Corey Linsley went out, but a great overall performance from almost everyone on the offensive side of the football with very, very few negative grades. All right, that's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for checking out the podcast today. Wherever you get your favorite podcasts, Dusty, Steve, and Sarah are going to be the ones bringing that to you today. I'll be right back here tomorrow on YouTube. And until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.